Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Speaks Energy, a podcast where we bring to you conversations with individuals who've experienced unusual difficulties in their lives, but they've not allowed those difficulties to define the course of their life. Today, we have with us a very special guest, Sanchita Ain. She's an advocate on record at the Supreme Court of India. With over a decade of experience as a lawyer, she has contributed to landmark constitutional cases broadly in the areas of women's rights, rights of minority institutions, rights of persons with disabilities, among others. She completed her master's in international human rights law from University of Essex with a distinction. All the credentials aside, Sanchita was diagnosed with a rare condition called dystonia in her early teen years. One of the reasons why I really wanted to bring her on the podcast is because I wanted to put this message out for everyone who's living with an invisible disability that you're not alone. And I really see Sanchita as a role model for everyone who's suffering silently. Sanchita has also been an I Can Lead Fellow, India's first national leadership program for women with disabilities. Welcome to the Speaks Energy, Sanchita. It's a pleasure and honor to have you and speak to you.
Thank you so much, Jelsyna. Thank you so much for having me today.
Right. So, Sanchita, if I can ask you to explain to our audience what dystonia is, and if you could just share your challenges that you have faced while navigating through law school and through, life beyond law school with an invisible disability.
Right, it's a fairly broad question. I'll try to cover as much as it comes to mind. Dystonia, again, it affects different people differently. Uh, some people just have it in their eyes, so their eyes would, uh, they would wink. It would seem that, they're winking at a person, but it's actually dystonia. If you would have watched in popular movies, there have been characters who would do this and they would be slapped, nobody recognizing that it's actually a disability and it's not something to be mocked at, it's not something to be treated the manner those characters were being treated in the movie. So when you would see involuntary movements in movies, they would show it as some sort of, they would have some weird sounds associated with it, like toy, toy, right? Those are actually, those involuntary movements are dystonia. So you would realize that people watching those movies didn't even know that it happens. So that's a challenge that anybody with a rare condition faces. And in fact, when I say rare, it's more common than, say, uh, MS, right? Or say Parkinson's. But people have heard of this, but not of dystonia, because because most people who have it, because of the stigma, because it starts at an early age, etc. So people get become homebound, right? Families either don't let them go out or they are themselves so conscious. I met someone in Bombay who has the same condition, and he says if I go out and I slur, women would think I am drunk and I'm misbehaving with them because of my involuntary movements. Nobody would realize what's happening, and therefore he hasn't stepped out of his house for several years now.
Right.
So I was trying to explain the challenges that people have faced all across. Of course, I haven't faced to that extent, and I mean, of course, one would try to one may picture the narrative as such that I was quite courageous, etc. But if it would have hit me the way it has hit them, perhaps even I wouldn't have been able to. So there are people all across that range. So just because I'm able to cope with it does not mean that I can impose the same on some other person, that they should have also been able to do it. So people can be positioned differently, uh, and one just can be compassionate and kind to all of them, whether or not they are able to cope with their symptoms or not. As far as navigating the space was concerned, uh, I faced exactly the same kind of stigmas I'm talking about right now. People asking me, oh, you're not feeling well, is it? Okay, so it must be a headache, okay, or it
Hmm.
must be a fever. Do you have fever? No. Okay, you have headache. You don't have fever, but headaches. Everyone has headaches, right? Something of that sort.
Hmm.
Till the time one doesn't stop sharing, one says, "Forget it. How are you?" And you smile and say, "Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?" Right? So because one, people are not willing to hear. Second, people are not willing to, or they are not in a state to understand to what you deal with. They have not really seen as many people dealing with the kind of condition you deal with. But along with that, sometimes you feel the need to share more. So I have had those phases. So I've had phases when I was not in a state to talk about it because it was enough for me. Right? I had so much of baggage from the past when people would constantly, when I was growing up, say all such things. Right? My friends, my teachers, like I would think at least this teacher gets me, and then finally, she
Hmm.
also stopped getting. Right? So therefore, I didn't want that for myself, so I stopped sharing. Then I had that phase when I thought that it was also my responsibility towards, because we all started connecting those who have dystonia, and I really thought that it was also my responsibility to talk about it, so that more and more people get aware not about just this condition, but about other conditions as well, right? And by then, it was not even recognized as a disability, so that had its own challenges. So I didn't have a scribe, because of which I didn't appear for my plus two examination, because we had to write 3 plus 3 hours for every exam every day. So I thought, what if I don't can't write after a point? Then what happens? And therefore, and people thought maybe I would never be able to write the exams. um, so I faced all that while it was not even recognized. But even though the law recognizes it, the society continues to be the same. It's going to be a long way ahead. Um,
Right. Right. Got it. It's so heartening to listen to your like first account challenges of how you navigated with an invisible disability, because you can't always articulate and tell another person, what you're exactly facing or what you're exactly
right, like I
you're
didn't. See, I
correct,
just dodged the question because it's too much to talk about it.
correct,
And to expect, and this is something I have heard even from people who are blind, etc., that you ask them, how do you do it? Now
correct,
you are dealing with it, and then you have to explain to the other person how you
correct.
do it, right? So it's too much sometimes for us. So yeah, so I haven't really told you what sort of involuntary movements I have, what sort of pain I have, because that in itself is too much to deal with for me.
Right.
And then to describe it is, it just feels like,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
correct. Right. So
deal
have you
with.
ever, yeah, have you ever faced like instances where, people have disregarded your invisible disability and have given more primacy or importance to persons with visible disabilities?
Right. So people would say normally, like, yeah, but you have your limbs intact.
Hmm.
But look at those people who don't have their eyes, who can't hear. Imagine what they are going through, right? Have cancer, right? So all of these kind of stuff has come, and therefore I just felt beyond a point to stop talking about it. Because see, then I don't even want to show that it's greater than theirs.
Hmm.
It's not like that,
Right.
right? It's different. It's just different, just to get
There's
to
no
understand.
comparison. Correct. Of
Right.
course.
So sometimes, see, when I'm in a state of mind where I'm patient and I'm okay, I'm not dealing with it right now, so I can still go ahead and give analogies, that if someone says this to you, how would you feel, and all that I can do to make them be able to relate what was so wrong or insensitive about what they said. But mostly when you meet general people who you know don't may not have that sensitivity, then you don't, like, it's like breaking your head against a wall. You don't wish to do that.
Right. Got it. And what did your like growing up? What did your support system at home look like? And how did you ensure you gave yourself, priority and importance when no one around you understood or who were willing to understand your situation or the difficulties that you faced?
Right. So, see, the problem is when you're a child, otherwise also your people's notion is that you may be acting up, you may be it must be less and you're making it big, right? And they need to kind of tell you what to do and how to do, right? So those needs remain there, whereas you are have different needs now, right, than any other child. So there's a gap there. Their ability to understand it was so less at that point, right? So they had their own expectations that I would continue to do as well in studies when suddenly I could not. So for them to be able to accept that was huge. They could not, and then I just felt like I had to distance myself because it was getting a vicious circle where even if I would have managed to motivate myself a bit and I would have really realistic, doable targets every day, because it was very hard for me to even lead a normal life at that time, right? So I was struggle with basic tasks. So I really needed to have realistic targets without that pressure, without those demotivating stuff that was coming my way, right? And it was cruel to have gone through that. People generally don't talk such things about families, but it's important to be able to talk about it. Just like now we have domestic violence recognized. So far as women's rights are concerned, I think it's also important to recognize them for all vulnerable sections, right? They go through it. There's nothing right, wrong about it, but just to acknowledge that they go through it, right? So that happened when people wanted to fix, and therefore I talk lot about autonomy, the right to make choice that even children have for themselves, right? So many deaf people are children are made to undergo the surgery they don't want. It
Right.
comes with that notion that as if we're not enough the way we are,
Right.
right? Why do you take me to one doctor after another, even when those medicines are having side effects on me? And
Right.
I was ridiculously gaining weight, and I really didn't want to take those medicines. So at some
Right.
point, stop. If it's curable, fine. Wouldn't have, but just because you want me to do well, I think that's not how it's going to work. So
Right.
therefore, I had my own world. I had
Coping
distanced myself.
mechanisms.
Right. So I kind of assessed my own self. I saw what my at that time what it was like, right? So to compare myself, what it used to be, what it could be, etc., was heartbreaking. That's what they were doing, but I was supposed to not do it at that time. So to see what I could do, what I couldn't do, what were my strengths, being in that state was what I did, and I used those strengths, and and I just did whatever I could. Even the fact that I could do it would make me so happy
Right.
that I suddenly stopped bothering about the results.
Right.
And gradually I reached that point as well. But now I didn't care what people thought, what social standards were, right? So I just don't care about social
Hmm.
standards anymore. And that's what I encourage young people to do, not to care about social standards, because they keep varying. They don't take into account the obstacles, the barriers you're facing,
Right.
right? So whether you're successful or not, whether you're a successful lawyer, is how do people assess it? Or they have luxury cars, they have
Hmm.
big bungalows. That doesn't make you successful, right?
Right.
That may also mean that you're doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing to
Hmm.
get that amount of money,
Right.
right? That only a reasonable person would get if they follow the right path. So
Correct.
it doesn't mean success. It doesn't mean that you're good, right? So I find serious problems with these social standards, and I have chosen long back to step out of it. People wonder,
Hmm.
oh gosh, she's not ambitious. Now this is what I face now, right?
Hmm.
So now when I'm able to match other people, I am still in my own world. I'm doing my own thing, being my own self, and people are like,
Hmm.
she's not ambitious enough. No, right? So I I find that to be problematic, and therefore, so many people struggle to come to this mainstream jungle of because of these social standards, right?
Right.
Because it's mainstream is so just one single line,
Mm.
right? There's no acceptance of diversity in it. If you have different goals, it means you're not ambitious. Is what perhaps we need to change as a society.
Right. Right. So it's very like what you mentioned it very articulately that a person who is not, physically in conformity with the set standards of what a person should be like, just because a person is different physically, or, because they have inherent difficulties with having like an invisible disability, people tend to assume that, we're not the person is not ambitious enough or cannot navigate through life with their own set of challenges. What you mentioned is like very very like it gives a lot of perspective into the life of somebody with an invisible disability. And yeah, so Sanchita, how did you like, what were some of your key hobbies or like activities that you did to like which helped you get by difficult days? Were there any hobbies
Right,
that you had or like something that you did for like which acted as a coping mechanism for you?
right. So I had to kind of reinvent myself as a person after I was diagnosed, and then I had different phases before the diagnosis. Okay, so since it was rare, I have also spent quite many years without a diagnosis or a misdiagnosis because the symptoms are also quite overlapping when it comes to neurological conditions. So
Okay.
all of that happened, but the thing is, I have had different phases
Hmm.
when it was not that pronounced, when the symptoms were not that pronounced, but I was still struggling. And then when the symptoms were pronounced, I was even struggling with the daily tasks. So I have diplopia on my left eye, which means I have a double vision. So
Oh,
my ability to read was compromised
okay.
with nobody acknowledging, recognizing. My ability to focus was also gone. But my hobby used to be reading. So I was an
Okay.
omnivorous reader before dystonia hit me. My hobby was just reading. Like there was nothing else I could call my hobby to
Right.
read. So like even when I had fever, 102 fever, I would be reading, right? I had to finish the book if I started one. So I
Mm.
would be reading all night. Exams over, not time to read, novels and stuff. There was nothing like when I prepared the list. Finally, a doctor asked me to prepare a list of all the books I had read, and they
Mm.
were still in my plus two. I had read so many, and I just put that away with that contentment. I'm done. I'm done for
Mm.
my life. Now I would only focus on reading what was necessary.
Mm.
So that hobby went out of the window. So I started, and then whatever hobby I took up at that time, all required focus. Now
Oh.
I wanted a hobby
Mm.
where I didn't have to pay as much attention
Mm.
because it had to do with my brain.
Mm.
So then I found traveling to be a hobby, but I can't travel all the time, right? I have my
Mm.
limitations. So I like listening to music,
Mm.
right? But then when the grade of pain increases, then I
Mm.
can't be involved in a passive activity. It doesn't seem to have an impact. So then I watch something to,
Mm.
just make myself forget what I'm dealing with. And so I have those grades, just like I have it for caffeine as well. So
Mm.
there's a way I manage my pain and stuff. So I would take just green tea most of the time, or caffeine free stuff, and then I would take caffeine, green tea, just green tea if it's a
Okay.
bit, if it's more than tea, if it's way more, or I have to do something urgent, then it's coffee, right? So
Okay.
that it keeps continues to have its impact on the pain.
Right.
um
Right.
so my hobbies also are kind of related and connected to
Right.
my condition and
Got it.
what helps me.
So right. So like one thing that comes to my mind right now is that so is this like a temporary phase where you can't focus when you're in pain, or is it like a perpetual condition? Because if it's a perpetual condition,
It's
then
a
how do you?
perpetual condition, but I have got used to it to this extent that mostly even I don't feel. If you ask me now, then I'll start explaining, oh, here this is happening, here that is happening, right?
Okay.
So if I go for a massage, then my whole body they're like, gosh, what is this? And I'll be like, yeah, it keeps happening, right? So this is like perpetual. A few
Okay.
things remain there,
Right.
but rest of it is something. That fluctuates. So if
Hmm.
I keep doing, then it would. So I have to manage those as well. How much
Okay.
do I do what I do,
Hmm.
and it can vary. So there are days when walking again. Walking became a very very important activity that
Okay.
kept me going. Right.
Okay.
So walking also kind of symbolized the fact that I'm okay.
Hmm.
Right. So I didn't stop walking come what may, even though
Right.
I would walk like a tortoise holding the wall, but I didn't stop walking.
Right.
Right. And so walking was, yeah, I just went back to those days. So walking has been important, and right, and I even went for trekking. So I planned that. I had it's
Okay.
a long story just to cut it short. So when I was diagnosed with it, I was like, I bought a big bag for myself,
Hmm.
right, like a rucksack, and it was like, I'll go for trekking. When I don't know, but I'll definitely go. So
Okay.
when I was struggling to get up from the bed, I was
Hmm.
like, I will go for trekking one day,
Oh.
and it happened. Yeah, so this was in November 2010, and finally my first trekking trip happened in 2014, right?
Hmm.
And
Okay.
I climbed up to 11,000 feet
Hmm.
square, right?
Whoa.
So yeah,
Okay.
so
Got it. And
right.
so this also makes
Uh,
me like want to ask you, when you're facing like a condition, like a neurological kind of a condition where like your focus is, your focus comes into play. How did you like navigate through practice?
hmm, hmm,
Because lawyers, their life, it
yeah,
demands like long hours, demands like intense focus in the work they do. How did you navigate through like your work life after you graduated
right.
from law school? Yeah.
So I went through I suffered a lot,
Hmm.
right? I suffered a lot, but even for a second, it didn't strike me that this is not what I should be doing, or maybe I was not meant for this.
Hmm.
It didn't strike me. I just felt like I'm good at this,
Hmm.
right? I'm so damn good at this. My brain works so well when
Hmm.
it comes to legal problems, legal issues, the way I interpret the law. This is good, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I was even hired by people, right? So I would have
Right.
options, and employers would come to me to hire me,
Okay.
right? Even someone like Mr. Salman Khurshid, he asked me to join, and I told him for
Okay.
6 months I'm not yet. Right.
Okay.
So these
Wow.
things were happening that gave me more and more confidence that, I'm cut for this. I'm really
Right.
good at this.
Correct.
I don't need to spend all the time on earth. I don't, though I ended up spending a lot of time. So
Hmm.
the deal with my first boss was like, I can't work under tight deadlines, but I had to, right?
Hmm.
So, but then it also kept me motivated. So I had something to do every day. Every
Hmm.
single day was a new day. I had a reason to jump out of the bed when I would struggle to
Hmm.
do the
Wow.
basic tasks. Otherwise, sometimes you with enough motivation you are able to do it better than you would have
Right.
otherwise.
Got it. Amazing. Yeah. All right. And like, how do you manage your stress levels? Because I assume, or I foresee that your condition may probably aggravate with stress. Is that the case? Does it? Yeah. And like, how do you
Right, of
manage
course
your
it
stress
does.
levels in an
So I have to
environment?
manage, right.
Yeah.
So I have to manage my stress better than anybody else. What happens to them at stress level 7 would happen to me at 2, right?
Hmm.
Or even 1.
Correct.
So,
Hmm.
and with no kind of sensitivity around, because people look down upon people who get, oh, you get too stressed about
Stressed.
just this, right? So they don't realize that we are managing, actually, we are managing our stress in a better manner than you guys. It's
Hmm.
just 1 or 2 occasions when we can't, and you get to see, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, it's one thing you have to hide it from other people. The other thing, it's bursting out, right?
Hmm.
And you're suffering because of
Hmm.
it. So, of course, it's very important that the environment around you understands that yes, this happens and this is normal for you,
Okay.
and they don't feel guilty about it. They don't like my boss feeling guilty would have sucked. So thankfully, he was not feeling guilty about it. He was just trying to be supportive, to be around.
Hmm.
Um, but he wouldn't ask me even to stop working because that's not what he wanted, right?
Hmm.
I suffered a lot because I really wanted to do justice to the work,
Right.
right? Um, but then a phase came, and people can have different phases. People can
Right.
feel the same, right? So now I don't feel that I need to go through so much of stress. So I
Got it.
keep in mind two aspects of it: sustainability and flexibility. So you need
Right.
to be flexible with your deadlines, with your goals,
Correct.
and you need to develop it in a sustainable manner so that you don't have that burnout. And burnout, people can have burnouts for different reasons. I have seen people
Correct.
in practice who don't have a disability yet they have suffer
Hmm.
a burnout.
Of course.
So therefore people's ability may be compromised just to take stress as well. So there are different ways of managing it as well. How much is at stake, sometimes that tends to make you, because I also have a compassionate side. So when a lot is at stake for the client, then of course I would tend to feel uh, under pressure, and that creates
Obligated to
stress.
perform.
So
Right.
to obviously manage that bit that I want to do, as I will still do as well, or I would even do better if I don't
Hmm.
take the pressure on myself. I just take it as a work, right? I distance myself enough. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen, because clients tend to talk a lot about what they're dealing with, and it can affect me as well. That happens. The other thing that happens, of course, of course, when you are at this age, and then you don't have to really spend that much time. You have help and stuff, but for someone with disability, it's also difficult to reach that point in career when you can hire people or you can afford to have helps around you,
Hmm.
right? So it stays challenging because in transport, etc. Also, I needed help. I needed to take a cab. I can't drive, and metros were a no after a point because people were so insensitive towards what they couldn't see.
Right.
So yeah, so therefore these are the challenges. These are
Hmm.
how you navigate, but there is no one perfect way. uh, you can never ever say that, yeah, now I know how to do it,
Hmm.
right? It's okay to screw up. That's something to kind of understand and accept,
Hmm.
that it's okay to screw up, and perhaps we get it better than other people. And so the adaptability bit is very important because other people won't, so we have to, basically.
Right. This wants me make this makes me want to ask you that do you like set your do you like communicate with the people that you work with or the people you're reporting to, like in your initial years, that this is the way that you work and you need like your
Right.
time
So
or
see,
like
I was
space
very
to
clear about,
function?
uh, right. So Justine, I was very clear about one thing.
Hmm.
If you don't understand my needs, if
Hmm.
you're not willing to accommodate them, you don't deserve to work with me.
Hmm.
I'd rather not work than
Hmm.
work with the person who doesn't deserve to. I was
Right.
very clear about that. I didn't let somebody trample on my dignity. Because if
Hmm.
that would have happened once, it would have taken the rest of my life to get back my confidence and do well in my work, right? Because
Correct.
I had seen how that vicious circle works. I didn't want
Correct.
it back.
Correct. Right. Wow. And like I think it requires like a certain level of merit to have that confidence within you, even within you, for you to like know that you are of a certain level and the people who work with you need to like deserve you to like have you on board.
See,
And
again, if you have got the bit about diversity, that we are all
hmm,
different and we all have our own plus and minuses, then you
right,
will be able to appreciate your own pluses. Everyone
right,
who has those,
hmm,
right? Others may not be able to do it in their
hmm,
circumstances. Like I may hire someone and I may not be able to appreciate because I'm getting frustrated that the work is not getting done. I'm
right,
okay about doing that. But
hmm,
you yourself, how you
hmm,
treat yourself, what you
hmm,
think about yourself is in your hand.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense, yeah. Like, unless you see yourself in a certain way, you can't like expect others to like respect you the way that you deserve to be.
Right,
And
because I
that's
am
something
not
that
the
you
best.
command,
It's not
right?
like I'm the best. It's not like no one can do better than me, right?
Hmm.
So it's none of these.
Hmm.
Yet I deserve the respect, and yet
Right.
I deserve to be treated with dignity,
Right.
right? And I I I knew my strengths, right?
Hmm.
I knew my strengths, and I knew that where they were exactly helping people.
Right. So what you mentioned about, having that belief and that conviction for yourself that each of us have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. That's extremely important. Because unless you have that conviction within yourself for yourself, you won't be able to like make anybody else believe that for you, right?
Yes, yes, precisely.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even realize that we're lacking in self worth because of the
Hmm.
way people have treated us in the past. We carry those
Right.
baggages. So
Hmm.
perhaps sitting with a therapist who doesn't have ableism themselves, even
Hmm.
to get one of those is challenging,
Right.
right? Or to have a kind of your core group that really
Hmm.
gets you,
Hmm.
where you can go and where you can talk to them, and it can be of different age groups, it can be whoever. So
Hmm.
expecting it would always be family may not be a criteria. So whoever wherever they
Hmm.
are, perhaps reaching out to them when you need that kind of a support is important
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
because sometimes you doubt yourself, you're like, maybe that person is right, maybe
Hmm.
I am overthinking, you have those
Hmm.
doubts. So you
Hmm.
need that kind of a community who would get exactly what to say in those situations to
Right.
tell you that no, it's not about you, right? Just
Hmm.
that.
Right. And Sanchita, I'm really curious and really want to know your work as an I Can Lead fellow. How did that, like, what was the work that entailed as an I Can Lead fellow? And yeah, how did you get
Right,
recognized?
right. So I think it was more of a kind of my work on myself that
Hmm.
happened. It was a very, very transformative. So when I told you about that core group, I instantly thought of people, like
Right.
these people with were my cohort, with
Hmm.
whom I shared a screen actually. It was
Hmm.
all virtually because of COVID.
Okay.
And we had these sessions done,
Mm-hmm.
and it was conducted in such an amazing manner that suddenly we could see those wounds, those scars, what we want to do, what we need to do, personal, professional, all of that. And those sessions were really, really useful.
Hmm.
And perhaps it was during those sessions that I started to, doing stuff, because I was so much into that world of bitterness that it was very hard for me to talk about things,
Hmm.
right? So that people won't understand. So I think that having that cohort helped me to talk about it there, to understand, okay, there are people who get me,
Right.
right? That's huge. And then to come out of that and then do whatever I could
Hmm.
in the society to make myself heard, make myself seen, because
Hmm.
I had that validation out there and I
Right.
knew that they were there. I could just, go back and tell them, what happened today, right? So that's why I say you need to have that core group.
Right.
That was very, very useful to have.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think we should have more such, trainings, workshops, whatever you may call it. And we also had a lot also happened with us during that phase, was since a lot was opening up, we were not really prepared to face them all.
Hmm.
So it was a very, very consuming kind of a process as well. So one needs to be in a safe space. That's
Hmm.
very important. Just
Right.
to open up before anyone who thinks they can give you that space may also not be ideal. The
Right.
space also, so we need to create more safe spaces for people,
Right.
not just
Right.
for people with disabilities, but for other marginalized sections. There can be intersectionality as well. There
Correct.
can be someone from the LGBTQI community as well who is a
Correct.
disabled person, or otherwise, right? So
Hmm.
I think we and people are not uh, people didn't talk to us about it, right? So how many people have come to you and said, "Oh, hey, I'm a gay person"? Nobody would
Right.
have yet, but there are people who are gay around, and they face stuff. They
Hmm.
don't talk to us about it. Why?
Correct.
Right? So to provide them safe spaces as well, then
Hmm.
becomes important.
Correct. Correct. I may be digressing a bit, but it just struck me that Sanchita is also a very celebrated teacher, and she's one of the most like sought after professionals, legal professionals who teaches and conducts courses. So Sanchita, like in your experience as a teacher, do you think that your disability has made you more of an empath and more of a, like a more refined teacher and somebody who can connect very closely with students? Could you
Right,
share light? Yeah, can
that
you
has
share light?
happened really, because as a student I always felt if you're not good, I would get very frustrated. So though
Mm,
every student would come to me, Sanchita, ye nahi ho raha, I don't know this, how to do this, and they would explain, I would also get frustrated with them, right?
mm,
Like, you don't understand even this. But I stopped doing that after
mm,
I fell sick, right?
mm,
And I knew that it had that purpose, though,
mm,
it's just too much to think everything has a larger purpose,
mm.
but I knew that this was part of that game plan,
Right.
right? So when I stepped into the shoes of a teacher, I told my students on day one that I will never ever give up on you,
Mm.
right? Because
That's so
someone didn't
important.
give up on me, and therefore I am here today,
Wow.
right? Yes. So that remains with me, and I, in my space. So it's not like online classes. I can't really connect with every student, everyone,
Mm,
but in my space,
mm.
people feel significant. People feel worthy. That happens in my space.
Right. Right. That's what makes you such a favorite teacher whenever you're like conducting a class or a course. Makes a lot of sense. Is there probably a message that you want to drive to persons in authority, be it at educational institutes, in the legal profession, or to caretakers of persons with disabilities through the podcast?
Right. So as I said before, please don't impose your standards on people. Right. That's very important. Right now, my associate has spinal bifida. He also has intellectual disabilities. So it's too much for me to deal with them. So I
Mm,
understand. I appreciate what people have to deal with.
mm,
Right. Because I don't have it, so I have to deal with it. Right.
mm,
And it's affecting my work. So again, I have to deal with it. So these are,
mm,
of course, realities that you need to
mm,
deal with. Not saying you don't have to, but it's important to take a step back and think, what am I doing here, right?
mm,
What is it that I want
mm,
from this relation,
mm,
whatever it is, right? What is, because one of my goals also is whether I'm teaching, whether I am in a position of an authority, it's also to train that person. That's a responsibility on me, right? So if an intern doesn't do anything, I blame myself the most,
mm,
right? So I told my associate initially when it was not working, I told him, look, it's my failure as well,
mm.
and I would rather be concerned about my own failure because I can work on it then, right? So
Right.
what can you do to be able to understand what you can do is my job, and to
Mm,
get then ask you to do that bit is my job, then to take you to another level is again my job. So I always
correct.
tell people, if you're here, I'll take you here, whether you're an
Mm,
intern under me or a student under me or working under me, that's my job.
mm,
So to put it on the other person and blame the other person is problematic. And then to understand कि ठीक है इतना ही है ऐसा ही है, or then or the person may have other abilities, to
mm,
take time off and think what those abilities are. Like, he can speak really well,
mm,
so why can't I let him argue cases? I can. If
mm,
I train him, I can
mm,
ask him to go and argue cases. He'll be a very, very good arguer. So
mm,
why can't I train him to do that?
mm,
Right? So these are the things that you can do only if you step back from your
mm.
own. "ऐसा होना चाहिए, this is how it should be. This is how it should be." Right? One needs to step back and be able to do it. And
Right.
someone would have done it for you, because of which you could also, because it. we are not really, uh, we all look different. Why?
Hmm.
Because we're meant to be different. So just
Right.
acknowledge it. Seriously.
Hmm. Right. There is power in diversity, and also, like in educational setups, like generally the tendency is for teachers to, have, for teachers to look at everyone the same way, or like for teachers to not be malleable enough to like look at persons with invisible disabilities with more empathy. So, what is the message that you would like to drive for people in authority in educational institutions? Because there are
Right.
certain affirmative actions that are required for persons with invisible disabilities. So,
Right. So
yeah.
I think it's required for everyone. Everyone, as in persons with all disabilities,
Hmm.
even if you understand this much, that you are required to provide them reasonable accommodations, what that means, the kind
Right.
of modifications in the system that they need, not
Correct.
what you can provide. It's your responsibility to be able to provide.
Hmm.
It never seems feasible. Trust
Hmm.
me, whoever is in authority, it would never seem feasible for you
Feasible.
to provide
Correct.
it for just one person or two persons. And
Hmm.
persons with disabilities will always be in minority, right? There will
Hmm.
always be one or two persons in the
Correct.
entire school, right? Even
Correct.
if you encourage everyone to come, but still you'll have only one or two. So therefore, you'll have to, even if it feels like it's an extra pain, right?
Hmm.
And you don't even see uh, where though that ableist approach and where that ableism is coming into your behavior, etc. Still, you need to take these actions. At least these are the concrete steps that you need to reach out to the person and ask them, what do you need? Your
Right.
mind will tell you he must be saying stuff that he doesn't need.
Hmm.
He'll misuse it.
Hmm.
Don't give it. This is an advantage.
Hmm.
These kind of words will occur, these kind of thoughts will come. Why?
Hmm.
Because of the conditioning we have got. It doesn't
Correct.
go away in a day. We are not used to being with persons with disabilities. So these thoughts stay with us, right?
Correct.
So that chatter will come, and to understand that we all are at some point or the other sexist, ableist. Even though I talk about gender rights, I am bound to, I may not understand the issues of a certain class,
Correct.
right? I may have my own stereotypical notions still about women, about persons with disabilities. I will still continue to have it because I'm part of the society. So you
Correct.
first acknowledge that
Hmm.
if you're saying this is ableist, it has to be ableist. Then let me give it a thought, right?
Right.
If you found it problematic, if you found it disrespectful when
Hmm.
I made this joke,
Hmm.
let me think. At least even
Hmm.
if I don't understand, let me not make it.
Correct.
That's how we start to get what ableism is.
Right. Right. Wow, this was a very, very insightful conversation that I had with you. And I'm really, really hoping that this episode is watched by people across categories, across classes, across professions. And yeah, it was lovely speaking to you, Sanchita. Do you have any
Thank you, Josina.
concluding thoughts?
Thank you, Josina. I thought that I could pour my heart out, talk about stuff that otherwise I perhaps wouldn't ever have talked about. So thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate the work you are doing. Really, you are a blessed soul. Just keep doing what you do. Really proud of you.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely speaking to you. All right, Sanchita. Yeah. Bye.